This isn't one of those scripted cooking shows, folks, you know? We're really cooking here.
Creamy pasta, peas, mushrooms, and meatballs.
All right, this is a really easy dish that just has a ton of ingredients. But to get started, you want to start your meatball mix. And for that, I'm going to be reading from a list because there's a lot.
Let me help you.
Oh, sure.
Meatballs.
Oh yeah, you probably want the meatballs list.
Meatballs. To start off with a ½ cup of TVP.
By the way, these are meatless meatballs. Just in case you were curious, we are still a plant-based channel.
A ½ teaspoon beetroot powder, 1½ tablespoons methyl cellulose, 1½ teaspoons pea protein.
Now, you can substitute pea protein with like chickpea flour or something like that if you want to. It's fine.
1 teaspoon mushroom seasoning, 2 tablespoons nutritional yeast, 1 teaspoon garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon onion powder.
The garlic powder might be onion powder, the onion powder might be garlic powder, I'm not really sure.
1 teaspoon dried thyme, a ½ teaspoon black pepper, freshly ground please, 1/4 cup breadcrumbs, 1 tablespoon white wine vinegar, 1 tablespoon soy sauce. Low sodium is our of choice.
Yeah, we actually found one on Amazon that's super low, and it's actually really, really good, so that's the one to use.
And 1 cup of water or more as needed.
May need a little bit more, because the breadcrumbs will soak some up. And now we mix. Yes, you can totally have mixed the dry ingredients first and tried to get everything all homogeneous first, and that's probably the best way, but you know what? I do it like this all the time. Just the throw it in and mix it together method, it works just fine. It'll be kind of nasty looking, I'll just be honest. I mean, that's not really an attractive looking thing, you know? We did do meatballs once before, and this is essentially a take on that recipe. You can spice things up as you like, add this, take away that. There's a few things that are necessary. The methyl cellulose, the TVP, those are kind of really important. It'll look a little bit loose at first, but see how it's coming together? And it's homogeneous. Look at that, I got it all mixed through. Now, you can also wait and do the breadcrumbs later. I didn't really find much difference, so I don't worry about it. And set that aside for about 20 minutes or so. All right, so I got a brand new induction burner to use on the table because the other one sucked. I mean, it didn't suck. It was okay, but this is supposed to be better.
We wanted a fancy new toy, let's be honest, shall we?
Okay, whatever. So now that our meatballs are on the side, we're going to make the sauce. Now, one thing you want to do at this point is also get a bunch of water going and cook your pasta. Now, we're using fettuccine, but you can use spaghetti, you can use tagliatelle, you can use pretty much any pasta you like. I like a long noodle for this, but pretty much any noodle is good. You are using ½ pound, so 8 ounces, okay? And I have here some chopped onion and chopped mushrooms. How much of each do we actually have, Derica?
We have ½ of a medium onion and 8 ounces of fresh mushrooms.
And I also have a dry pan. There is nothing in this pan, and it is cast iron, so it's, you know, reasonably non-stick.
We chose baby Bella mushrooms because that's Brian's favorite small mushroom, but
they were on sale.
You can also use button mushrooms if you wish.
It's 8 ounces, it's a whole package. So, you know, you're gonna use a lot of mushrooms for this dish, but it's so worth it. I have veggie broth at the ready in case I need it. And I'm sorry if this burner is a little bit noisy. I think it is.
So the veggie broth we're using is our own recipe. I will put the link to that in the description below. It is super easy, and basically it's just using table scraps to create a really delicious broth.
I have this sucker cranked up to 10 just to see what it'll do.
You gonna want the heat thing for the candles?
Not yet. Okay. I believe it only magnetizes the part at the bottom, so I don't know. We'll find out, won't we?
I guess we will.
I have the handle things to keep it cool, and I almost never use them. Although, you know what? I'm gonna need it because it's starting to get warm right here already. Okay, I got a handle on here now. All right, it is ever so slightly starting to stick, so, you know, in with, I don't know, a tablespoon or so of veggie broth. Get that steaming effect. See my glasses?
I'm really happy with the aroma in our kitchen right now because I love the smell of mushrooms and onions cooking together.
Oh yeah, it just works. Now this dish went through a few permutations, and you can make it pretty much however you want. We used cannellini beans one time instead of meatballs, and it worked okay. The meatballs, meatballs, they take it to a different level. It's almost like a Swedish meatballs kind of thing, or almost a stroganoff, but not quite either one. Just a little bit interesting and different. There's really no name for it, just Brian's pasta. I don't know, just something I make.
I believe the style of meatball he's going to make today is the little tiny ones.
Yeah, polpettis.
Where last time we made this recipe, we actually flattened them into small little sausage-like patties.
I didn't like it as much. I like the meatballs. The patties were okay. If I could make meatballs that were this big, that'd be ideal. But that would be very hard to cook and not burn. So, plus it would take forever to make. All right. So our veggies are starting to cook down. What you want is for the mushrooms they'll shrink a little bit, and you want the onions to soften up. I have just a little bit of liquid in here. I'm not even really looking for color as much as I'm looking for them to soften.
Basically, when the onions are translucent, you know you're ready to go.
All in all, we're maybe 3 to 4 minutes in. So what I'd like to do now is start adding some of the other flavorants and additions. Since we're not using oil or butter, making a roux is a little bit more complicated. So what I want to do is add some veggie stock, veggie broth. It's not really stock. And I'm going to use flour just spread over everything.
So we're using a 1/4 cup of flour, and today we're using whole wheat flour because that's all we had.
Yep, yeah, I don't have any white flour, but it's okay. You can even use chickpea flour. You can use cornstarch if you want to. Just use less. You don't need a 1/4 cup of cornstarch. If you're using like white bread flour or something, you can probably get away with not quite a 1/4 cup, just because it's a little stronger for making sauces like this. Okay, it's going to start to stick to the bottom, and that's all right. Veggie broth to the rescue. Just don't let it burn. What we want to do is cook that in, though, to get rid of some of that cereal type taste. You've probably heard everybody say that. All right, now I want to add our milk.
So this is 1.5 cups of oat milk. You can use you can use cashew milk or any non-dairy milk of your choice.
Yeah, I like Oatly for my coffee. I generally like almond milk for cooking with, though. But hey, today we're making do, you know? That's part of cooking, too, is being able to make substitutions as needed. Now, what I want to do is make sure I break up all the bits and pieces of that flour in the pan so that it gets into the milk. Because once it gets to a boil, the starches expand, they start to take in the liquid, and it thickens the sauce.
He grabbed a silicone spoon, but at this point, a wooden spoon might make it easier to dislodge those stuck bits.
Yeah? You trying to tell me something? So, freshly armed with a wooden spoon, I am giving the pan a good scrape. I've also turned the temperature down to 5.5 because it was starting to get a little bit hot. I want this to come to a boil, but I don't want it to boil over. It's already starting to thicken up, which is a good sign. So before I scrape too far, let's start adding the rest of our ingredients other than the green things on the end.
Okay, so we need 2 teaspoons of thyme, a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 2 tablespoons nutritional yeast, and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice.
Now I'm actually going to hold off on the lemon juice too. I want to get these things incorporated first, and then we'll talk about the lemon juice.
If you're not familiar with nutritional yeast, it's one of our newfound favorite ingredients. It gives dishes a really great umami flavor, and it makes things a little cheesy. So in this instance, since we're trying to replicate a cream sauce, it's really going to help give more flavor to that.
Now, at this point, we have a totally usable sauce. You can totally just put pasta on this and eat it. The problem is you're not getting a lot of protein that way because there just isn't a ton of protein in this otherwise. And, well, it's lacking a little bit of extra flavors. Acidity and things like that are really nice to add. So that's where some of these other ingredients are coming in. But give me just a second here. I'm still scraping. And I'm going to turn this down even more. I'm going down to 2. My pan's going to stay hot because cast iron does that. By the way, this is the first time I'm ever cooking on this thing. So I think I'm doing all right because I'm just trying to guess the temperatures that it's using and, you know, how hot it is and that sort of thing. My pan, a little bit stuck, but I'll deal. Okay, our sauce is nicely thickened. So now I'm going to add in the lemon juice and
White wine.
1/2 cup of white wine to be exact.
Our wine is off-white wine.
It's kind of an orangey white wine.
That's because it's homebrewed.
I have the Pyrex for measuring, please.
Oh, sure.
And this happens to be our table grape wine. If anyone saw that video on our other channel, that's what we're using. And I'm gonna use half a cup. My rule of thumb for wine is don't use anything that you wouldn't drink. We would probably drink this wine with this dish, and we have in testing. And the wine adds a nice level of acidity. It adds extra flavors. It makes the dish just a touch more complex. Now, there is an old idea that the alcohol all cooks out. It's not entirely true. You would need to have it in an open container like this for hours for it to actually fully cook out. Quite a bit of it does, but you're still going to be left with some alcohol. So if you're sensitive to alcohol, leave out the wine. Just use a little bit more lemon juice. Smells incredible. The combination of the mushrooms with the thyme and the onions in the cream sauce with the wine, it's just really amazing. Smell-o-vision it's got to be a thing. I mean, they just really need to do it. Okay, now our sauce is ready. I want to set this to the side so we can cook our meatballs. Okay, so now that our sauce is made, our meatball mixture has stiffened up significantly. I have another pan going here so that I can fry up these meatballs. Now, I don't usually like to cook with oil, okay? And I try to avoid it as much as possible. But this is one of those times you kind of have to, okay? Because they will stick. These things will stick. And I'm gonna need a little spatula too. So let me just pour in maybe a tablespoon of oil, and I don't think all of it will get absorbed. So it's really just non-stick protection. Gotta be careful when you lift a pan off of a burner like this, it's gonna yell at you. Let me get a spatula, I'll be right back. I'm going to enlist Derica's assistance in the making of the meatballs. And yeah, I know I lifted it again. I have to. It's probably gonna be my biggest downfall with using this pan. Need a little bit more oil, that's just not enough. So maybe 2 tablespoons altogether, something like that. Okay, to make the meatballs, really, really simple. Wet hand, grab a little bit. We're making them ping pong ball size or so. Both hands get wet. Something like that size. Roll them in your hand. Get them nice and round. And then in the pan. They never stay round when you make them by hand. That's a little bit on the big side, but it's okay.
I don't know what I'm doing.
She never does this. I usually do this. In the pan. I find it easiest to start, think of it like a clock. Start at noon or 12 and go around the world and then go to the middle. That way you know the first ones are the first ones to flip and you know where they are. If you have children, this is probably a good thing to get them to do. That way you don't have to do it. Is that child abuse though? I don't know. When I was a kid, I didn't cook. I really didn't. I didn't learn to cook until I was in my 20s.
I remember making meatballs with my mom, so.
Let's try to pack them a little closer. Yeah, there's gonna be quite a few meatballs here. This is, if you watched our meatballs video, this is half a batch, basically, with a little embellishment, just to change the flavors up a little bit. Like I said, you can change it however you want, really. Now, as you cook them in the pan, they might flatten out a bit. They might make a lot of noise and spit at you. But I just wanna cook them until they're a little bit brown and then flip it over. I don't wanna burn them, obviously. Turn up the temperature a little bit, put it to 4.5. Sounds like a good number. Essentially, you wanna cook them on all sides as much as you can. Get them a little bit nice and brown, a little bit crispy, and we'll see when that's done. Okay, our meatballs are pretty well done. You don't wanna burn them. I did get a little bit of extra char on a couple of them. They got what we call over caramelized, just because, you know, I'm not used to this burner yet, but it's okay. They seem to be holding together pretty well. That's the methyl cellulose at work right there. I'm just scraping them and putting them in. I am not afraid to get some of the little bits and pieces in there too. I mean, hey, that's good flavor, right? You know, no problem with that. Now let me take this pan off, put this pan on, I'll be right back. I'm gonna turn that temperature way down because we're not actually cooking anymore so much as heating up and heating through. Like, I know the meatballs are still hot and the sauce is probably still hot because it hasn't been all that long, but I still wanna make sure. All right, now you're probably wondering, there's peas that have been sitting on the table for quite some time. They're frozen peas. I don't like to put them in too early because then they get a little bit mushy. I know mushy peas are a Brit thing, but not for this dish. I wanna just put them in. It's a whole different kind of pea too, isn't it? I don't know, I've never actually had them, I guess. And I just want to put them through, you know, mix them through. That way they get heated up and they keep that little bit of a snap and the freshness of the green pea. It's a lovely thing. Smells fantastic. Okay, and then we have our pasta. Now, I just had this sitting in a bowl, so it's probably all gonna be clumped together. Yep, just like it is. This looks like a job for tongs. When that happens, you know, just grab some, separate it. Takes a few minutes, no big deal. In the old days, you'd probably put oil in the pan, right? You know, but I'm trying not to do that because you know how much oil you would use to do this? Quite a bit.
Typically, when we're making this recipe, we're doing it on our stovetop, so we have multiple burners that are accessible to us. So he'd be cooking the pasta and the meatballs and the sauce all relatively at the same time so that they would all be ready to come together at the same time.
Yes. That is, in a perfect world, the ideal plan on how to cook anything. And I'm probably breaking up the meatballs a little bit. Let me get rid of this. This isn't one of those scripted cooking shows, folks, you know? We're really cooking here, in real time, for the most part. I do like to let this sit on the burner, on the heat, for just, well, make it a little warmer, for just a few minutes. There's a good reason for that. I want to make sure that those meatballs are cooked all the way through, even though there's nothing in them that you can't eat raw, okay? Everything about this, other than the pasta, though you could eat raw pasta if you really wanted to, could be eaten raw. There's nothing here that's dangerous if it's not cooked properly. That's one huge advantage to plant-based cooking. In most cases, that is the case.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno girando, delle belle turbando al riposo.
All right, so I got a tasting bowl, which means you know what time it is. Just gonna grab some of that pasta, get it in there, a little bit of the sauce on top, grab a meatball, you know, grab a meatball. Yeah, get in there. Got a meatball and a half. She gets to be the test subject today. I'm actually going to shut this off so that we don't have to listen to the fan. Apparently, we still have to listen to the fan.
My favorite part of this recipe is the texture. It really has that rich, velvety, creamy texture that you expect in a traditionally made cream sauce. So it's awesome that we can replicate that with a dairy-free product. My second favorite thing is the flavor. The thyme in this cream sauce with the hints of acidity from the lemon juice and the wine. It's just really lovely.
Mm-hmm. I think the meatballs are a really good choice for this. They add an extra texture that gives that meat-like thing that makes you feel like you're taking a bite of something. But with the mushrooms and everything, it's very meaty. It's very rich, hearty, and filling. It looks like it should be a very light dish. This is not. It's actually quite filling. Overall, I mean, I think the choice of fettuccine is probably best. Like I said, you can do this with spaghetti. If you don't eat all of it in one go, I probably wouldn't freeze this. I would put it in a container in the fridge and eat it within the next few days. I don't think it's gonna last super, super long.
Yeah, this style of sauce is not gonna freeze and then reheat well.
Yeah, and it's probably going to soak all into the pasta in that time too. So add a little bit of water, a little bit of vegetable stock, or a little bit more of the
wine.
You could add wine. I was thinking milk, but you could do that just to get it softened up a little bit, throw it in a pan and reheat it through, and you should be just fine. I'm gonna eat some more if she's not gonna. But basically, this is like super simple, comes together pretty quickly. And if you want to use like store-bought meatballs or beans or something, you can totally do that too and make it a lot quicker if you wanted to and a little bit simpler.
You can also make the meatballs ahead of time, and those do freeze well.
Absolutely.
So you can do a whole batch of meatballs so that way you can use them whenever you find it necessary for a dish.
But make this. It's really, really good. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.